Rhianna. I'm so excited to have you on my podcast. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me, Conny. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited too. You have a very impressive bio. But first, before we get into that, I would like to know a little bit, who is Rhianna when she's not working?
So I am a mother of three. I have a 24-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. It's pretty interesting on a day-to-day basis in my household. So all the fun things, though.
Yeah, sounds impressive. And where in the world, just about for my listeners, are you?
I'm right outside of Washington, D.C., right in the suburbs of D.C.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. East Coast of United States.
East Coast, yep.
I'm on the West Coast of Canada. So we're talking across country. Yeah, so like I mentioned, you have a really impressive bio, and I want to talk a little bit about your journey because you built and grew and sold a multi-million-dollar business, which is very impressive. But that's not what you're doing now. So tell us a little bit, what was that business about, and how is it different from what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I had a real estate business that I sold, and that was a combination of residential property management, which is like individually owned properties that people want to find a tenant for, and then also commercial property management, which was mostly condo buildings, so the building itself and not the individual units inside. And then I also had a construction, maintenance, and design company. So it was a combination of all those things, and then investment properties and all of that. So it was a lot.
It sounds a lot.
yeah. And I sold that a few years ago, back in 2018.
But so now I think you're still in real estate, but somehow different, no? So
yeah, so I took all of that experience that I had and started coaching and consulting with other businesses. So now, instead of running the business, I help other people with their businesses and help them grow and make more money.
Well, that's very needed these days, I think, because
yes.
so many more people are moving into the entrepreneur space now, and they may not be as experienced as you are with your business. But what was the reason why you gave up your other business? It sounds very overwhelming and stressful. Was that the reason?
That was absolutely the reason. I burnt out. I had a lot of stress and anxiety from growing the business, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it started with, signs of chronic stress and just excessive stress, and that led to a lot of health-related issues, stress-induced health issues as time got closer to when I sold my business. And ultimately, what ended up happening was I got pregnant with my second child, and that made me really think about my own health, funny enough, and what I needed to do to take care of myself. And so I knew I needed to make some really serious changes. And I knew that my health was really important, not just for me, but for the life I was carrying. And I had to shake things up and really rethink the journey that I was on.
Isn't it funny how we can push ourselves and push ourselves and push ourselves? No, it's like I come from a corporate background, and we worked crazy hours. Like if I look back now, this was it's nuts. And you're not taking care of yourself until something happens and you kind of are forced. It sounds like you did it almost a little bit willingly, but still forced because you got pregnant, no? So
yeah, and I think that's one of the funny things. And I had a conversation just today with a client who I was telling her, like, I'm the product of an immigrant family, and hustling and trying to put food on the table and have a roof over our head, and just making sure we could do whatever we had to do, whether we had to have 3 jobs. It didn't matter, but we had to hustle. And hustle culture is so ingrained, especially here in the United States. It's just become part of the fabric of the way we operate on a day-to-day basis. And managing stress and carrying stress was normal. And so, the joke I told her was, when I interviewed people to come and hire, to come and work with me, I told them that, if you're not having a nervous breakdown at least once a year, then you're not doing your job. Like, this is how normal it was for me to have a nervous breakdown and expect that my team would do the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was completely bad.
But it's crazy when you think back, you see now how crazy that is. But it was similar to me. Like when I was in the corporate world, I worked in finance. And I remember the HR director said to me, you can have a private life when you're retired. Now you're working here and you're doing at the same time, you have to do more training and more education. So it was basically required that you work for between 10 and 12 hours and have another advanced education on the side. And yeah, your private life can then be when you're retired, and
right.
This is
so backwards, completely backwards.
so backwards and so crazy. Yeah. So how do you now make sure in your new business, because we kind of we come from this, I noticed too, I come from Switzerland. Work is very high on the priority list, and you have to be successful, you have to be this and that and everything. So how do you make sure now in your new business that this stress and this being busy and all that doesn't creep back in?
Well, honestly, it's a work in progress. I mean, it was something that was so ingrained in me, and I have to check myself on a regular basis. I literally was having this conversation yesterday with my oldest daughter, and just being able to recognize that when I'm not busy, that it's okay for me not to be busy. And self-care, and really analyzing what self-care means, and really trying to figure out who I am authentically. And all of that plays a part in how I treat myself. And I think that we've gotten so used to being treated badly by others and then treating ourselves badly that I wasn't equipped to treat myself well. And so I have to learn how to treat myself well. And part of that is understanding my energy and understanding when it's low and when I'm high and when I'm okay and when I need to go take a walk, or when I need to be out in nature, when I need to give myself, a long bath or listen to some music and boost myself up. I had to really figure that out. And it's still a journey that I'm on, because I think, old habits always creep back in, but really being able to recognize that and being more thoughtful about that is kind of the key to that.
Yeah. And I do feel although it's getting better, like year over year, but it's still the culture or the society is still kind of self-care is a little, like a lot of people, like self-care is selfish, or I can't, especially as a mom. So I hear it a lot that everything comes first before the mom, even though that is unhealthy. But in society, we're still putting these women and men on pedestals that can do it all and hustle, and everybody comes first. And I feel like that's what you have to work against in a way too. We have to, that conditioning that we got before, and also that is still out there somehow, that should just be busy and hustle. And I mean, some very famous guy comes to mind who is completely into hustling, and we're putting this as something really aspiring and great. And so that's why I love your message. I saw on your website you say increase your profits, reduce your stress. So I really love that. Do you have a special formula how to get there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there are ways that you can build a business without it feeling stressful. I think we've gotten used to, like you were saying, like this idea of success. And I had to go through the process of redefining what success was for me. But society looks at success as the things that you have. I was in a Facebook group yesterday, engaging in some of the activity going on, and someone asked, if things are as important as they seem. Like, what do clients think when I drive up in, and this is for real estate agents, what do clients think if I drive up in an old car? What do they think of me? Or do they care? And some people said, no, they don't care. But honestly, people do care. People see your things as a level of success. And, you know, they don't know what's going on in your household and they could care less. Whether you have a happy marriage and happy children doesn't matter to them as much as whether you have a fancy car and a big house. And so when they look at you, they see success based on the things that you have. And it's unfortunate, but that is kind of the reality of it right now. And so, yeah.
I you know, like me, I help people with clutter, and I come across that a lot because we're starting to accumulate all these things and filling these big houses that we feel we have to have because, like, what would they think if what would the neighbor think if I didn't have the big house and all the things and the newest gadget and an old cell phone? And so, but then that's exactly what brings us, I think, to burnout or to being completely stressed out, because these things also all have to be paid and financed and all that, or in a business too, is like that this all has to be paid somehow, and you put yourself under a lot of stress. And if something happens to you, like maybe not stress related, but some accident happens, the stress becomes even bigger because you have this whole overhead over you. So
yeah, I was talking to my girlfriend just the other day, and in the same conversation, we talked about how she was tired of her job and she wanted to quit, but she also wanted to buy a bigger house. And it's almost a contradiction, right? So it's like, do you need a bigger house? No, but why do you want a bigger house? But what would bring you the most happiness and joy is not working at a job that you hate every day, because that's really going to impact you, not the things that you're going to have. So there's this idea that happiness comes with things, and that I will be happy once I have the things, and or I'll be happy once I make more money. And the solution to my problems and my unhappiness is how much money I make, which none of that is true. And I had to find that out, obviously, the hard way. Having gone through those experiences, more money doesn't make you more happy. Now, obviously, making sure that you can put food on the table and have a roof over your head is very important, and having those essentials in life is important. But beyond that, what does happiness look like? Because I doubt in your life that you know, money itself is what brings you joy. You know, when I ask this question of people, they say spending time with my family, you know, sharing with my loved ones, giving to charities, like all of that brings so much more fulfillment than the money itself. So resetting our brain is something we need to really do.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's so hard to sometimes to do, because A, we're conditioned, and B, the outside world basically tells us. And I was just being interviewed this morning, and also about things, and that's exactly how clutter happens. Maybe not necessarily with a house, but the house is then the reason that you have more clutter, because if you want to have a bigger house, our I don't know, our automatic reaction is to fill the house. No, so if you come from a smaller house to a bigger house, you fill the house. But the problem is not necessarily that she wants a bigger house. The problem is that the bigger house is not going to make her happy. It's, you know, it's like, and then she takes herself with herself to the bigger house, and then you're still not happy. And we're digging the hole deeper and deeper. In a way, but it's so hard. And I feel like you said you had to learn the hard way, but I think sometimes we really don't have another choice than learning the hard way, like as long as it's not really dramatic. But we do have to learn it somehow the hard way, because you can talk all about that experiences are more valuable than things, that money doesn't make you happy, but unless you're really experiencing it, it just stays mental, and you can't really get it in your psyche or in your body that it's really true.
Yeah, I think we also don't have great examples of what a happy life really looks like. I think, you know, when it comes to social media, everyone looks happy, but they portray this fake happiness that they have in their life, which isn't really true. And so there's this kind of fraudulence about it that people kind of understand, but there aren't really good examples of what happiness looks like. So we equate happiness to the things that we don't have. And then we aspire to get the things that we don't have. And then once we get those things and we don't feel any more happy, then we're confused. And so then we try to acquire more things. You know, it's very, it's this self-sabotaging cycle that just continues to happen, and we don't have any real tools to be able to manage that. It's
so
sad.
true. Other than talking about it, that's one of the reasons why you are on my podcast. That's a lot of the things I'm talking about, because I always say, like, there is a reason why your home is cluttered, for example. There is a reason why your finances are a mess, which is oftentimes the result of having too much clutter, or having clutter and too many things, because we're spending the money on things that don't make us happy without regards of the finances. But do you have, maybe like from your own experience or from how you're helping your clients now, any like practical tips, or what you're suggesting to your clients what to do, or anything that you practically did to get out of this kind of rat race thing?
So there's a number of things that I share. First is being more intentional with your time. One of the things that I learned was to manage my time more thoughtfully. I don't work 40 hours a week, and I don't want to work 40 hours a week. And I think that the idea of working 40 hours a week, almost the same as going to school for 8 hours, like, you know, there are things that have been created in order to drain us of everything that we have, right? And so, you know, when you go to a job, they want you to work 40 hours plus per week. But when you have your own business, you know, you are the one who's in charge. You don't have to work 40 hours a week to have a successful business. So the first thing is to figure out, what do you want to build? Like, what kind of business do you want to have? And then figure out what you need to be able to have that successful business. So what I created, what was called, I call it my Power 5, which is the 5 things that will help my business to grow. And I focus on those 5 things. And outside of that, I don't need to have a whole bunch of busy work. And so it's taken me some time to rid myself of the busy work, because at first I thought I need to be doing these things in order for my business to be successful. But yet I've defined the 5 things that will help my business to become successful. So all those extra things just overcomplicate my business, and it overcomplicates my life. And so I think there are simple ways to build a business. And so one of the things that I work with my clients is really to figure out, first, their Power 5, and 2, like, how to simplify the business as much as possible so that they are still accomplishing their goal, they're delivering for their clients, and they also are getting the money that they want. And it's a lot easier than people make it out to be. It actually is really, really simple, but I think we have this tendency to overcomplicate things because we think it needs to be complicated, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't need to be complicated at all.
Yeah, I agree. So when people try to declutter too, they make it complicated, or they think they need to be decluttered from today to tomorrow, which is also not really realistic. But for my listeners, could you give an example of 1 or 2 of your Power 5, or doesn't have to be yours? You could take just in general. What would be Power 5 be like?
So my Power 5. So for example, I'm in the building stages for my coaching business. And so a lot of mine has to do with marketing and brand recognition. So my Power 5, for example, is I do speaking, and podcast is one of my Power 5. So I do at least 2 interviews a month. And then I also do at least 2 speaking engagements a month. So that's part of my Power 5. So I need to make sure that I am creating brand recognition by exposing my message and telling people and sharing my information as much as possible on a regular basis. So when you think of Power Five or any type of thing that you do to grow your business, it's really just about consistently executing all on a regular basis. So for me, if I have 2 podcasts that I need to do each month, that means I have, 12 months out of the year. That means I'm doing 24 for the year, right? So I'm executing that on a regular basis. Now, let's say, for example, I got 4 this month, which does happen. That doesn't mean that I don't do it next month. I'm putting in habits and behaviors that will make sure that I am consistently doing and executing the same thing on a regular basis so that I can achieve that small little micro goal that I have for myself. So the 2 podcasts a month, if I'm successful and over successful and I do more, then that's great, but I still need to do 2 each month. So at a minimum, I have 2. So creating the habit of executing on that goal is really what's going to get me to the point of success. And it's just that simple. It doesn't need to be super complicated.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds just like my advice when I help people create a decluttered environment. I always say, like, a few minutes a day keeps the chaos away. You do it every day. It works so much better than having a weekend where you declutter for hours and hours, and then you don't change your habits at all. And after 2 weeks, it's a mess again, So it's like, it's wasted energy. You're literally wasting your energy by decluttering. So you better do it, like you just said, consistently. You do every day a little bit. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
and then,
everything in life is like that, I think.
Exactly. Yes, I know. But most of us, and me included, I don't take myself out, we often like the idea of being a certain way much better than the way to get there. No, it's like, somebody joked and said, yeah, I would want to lose I would want to be, let's say, only 140 pounds, but I don't want to lose weight. I want to just be 100. It's like the same. I often compare decluttering with losing weight. We always want to do these crash diets and hope then they work, but they don't work because we're not changing ourselves. So
yeah,
it sounds very
I learned
similar.
that too.
Yeah. And so do you have also some special habits that you implemented that help you keep the peace and the balance in your life? Like, I would assume you do.
Yeah. So the biggest, I would say one of the biggest things that I implemented that allowed me to get further faster was having accountability. So having someone that I report this information to. So for example, if my goal is to have 2 podcast interviews per month, then I need to make sure that my accountability partner knows that so that she can hold me accountable to making sure that that gets done. And so I have accountability people in my life for the different aspects of my life. So I have it for business, I have it for my health and wellness and self-care. I have someone who is great with just exercising and mental health. And I think having, and even with my kids, I have an accountability partner for that. So just even thinking about the different aspects of my life and how I want to grow, having someone who's going to hold me accountable to that is so key, and really helped me to become more successful. And doing it on a weekly basis. So I check in with my accountability partner once a week, but regularly I text and message them about maybe some of the struggles that I'm having, or whether or not I was able to do things well. And then I reflect on that. I reflect on, my successes. I reflect on some of my challenges, and we talk about maybe ways that I can improve and make things easier and make things better. But that collaboration, I think, is probably the number one reason why I'm able to achieve my goals as quickly as I have.
Yeah, accountability is big, especially since we're oftentimes easier accountable to some other person than to ourselves. Because, like, if we could do it to ourselves, but we often throw ourselves under the bus and do everything else. But if we have to be accountable to somebody else, we're more likely to actually really do it, because we don't want to show up and say, oh, I didn't do it, but to us, yeah. Yeah. And so, and what are you doing to make sure, like, because I would assume with having this business and having had the other business, you're a little bit like me, very ambitious. We want to reach the goals. We were sometimes the brain wants to be faster than maybe the body wants to be. So we need to also make sure we don't get into this overachiever hustle thing again. Which is also a daily practice. No?
Yes.
And any tips how we can make our overachiever brain happy while we're taking care of our health?
Yeah, so I have what they call shiny object syndrome, right? So it's like you see the shiny thing and you want to do the shiny thing, or you want, I think I get into this habit of wanting to do the next thing. And because I'm so motivated, I'm on a journey to continue to improve myself. Everything that I see that can help me, I want to do. So if it's a program or a book or whatever it is. But what I noticed is, and this, I got part of my reflection, I noticed that I have a bad habit of starting and not finishing. And I had a friend call me out on it. So she said, I'm going to tell you this because I love you, but you're not fully engaging in the content because you're too distracted. You're trying to multitask, which I think is everybody's downfall, right? It's like you're always trying to do multiple things at the same time, but you're not focusing on the one thing that's really going to help to improve you in general. And so if your goal really is to be better, then you're going to be better if you can focus your time and energy into one thing at a time. So I've had to, and it's a constant work in progress, just reset my brain into focusing and just looking at the one thing, just doing one task, just reading the one email, just, not checking my phone and driving, which is such a bad habit that I do all the time. But just doing one thing at a time and really getting to this place where my goal is to focus. And then I think I can get a lot further.
Yeah, but from the way it looks, you're in the same generation as I am. We were kind of told when we were younger that multitasking is the way to go, and you can be very proud of yourself if you can multitask. And now they actually discovered or can prove scientifically that our brain can't multitask. I mean, you can go for a walk and listen to a podcast, that works, but you can't work on several projects at the same time. And also they debunked also that computers can multitask. They don't multitask either. They do everything one after the other. So it's really a myth. Yeah.
And I think I'm starting to appreciate simplicity in even my thoughts. And when I can just focus on one thing, and finding ways that I can not distract myself. So, one of the things that I have a problem with is I have a lot of ideas, which is great. I just have new ways of wanting to do things or new thoughts or whatever, but being able to not distract myself with those new ideas is so important, because otherwise I can't fully execute on the idea that I had. So sticking with one thing at a time, one thought process at a time is even really challenging. So I tried to figure out how I can take that momentary thought and place it somewhere so that I can come back to it later. Otherwise, it's a rabbit hole. Once I go down that path, it just is endless.
I have the same issue, and I have this long list somewhere of all the cool ideas I have. And it's literally a daily pulling myself back to no, we're doing this now.
It's so hard. It's very hard, especially when you've been doing it for years. So it's unlearning bad behaviors is it's a work in progress, but it's so important.
It's the hardest thing. And there's also not helpful that there's all this myth out there, like that somebody once published and said it only takes 21 days for a new habit to form, which is totally not true. We all know that. We all who tried to get a new habit in 21 days know that this is not working in 21 days.
No, but then I think it's funny because I read a study kind of similar, which is like, how important it is not to eat and do an activity at the same time, because it leads to overeating, right? When you're not mindful about your eating, then you're not paying attention to your body saying that you're full, which means you have a tendency to overeat. So I think that multitasking habit definitely is one that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, Rhianna, I could talk with you forever. This is really like, we're so alike. And it's literally today's challenge. Like a lot of people always say, oh, you're lucky you don't have any clutter. And I always say, I may not have physical clutter, but I have a lot of ideas. And I struggle with the same things that most people struggle, that we're getting pulled in 7 million different directions, and that it's hard to keep ourselves on track and to make sure we're taking care of our bodies and not overdo ourselves and end up in burnout or worse, you know. Well, I don't know, burnout is bad, but I mean, like, yeah. So do you have any last words of wisdom that you would want to let my audience know? Not that you didn't drop any wisdom yet, but just like some parting wisdom gift.
Yeah, so I would say, just to kind of repeat myself, but to summarize, keeping things simple, I think is key to success in life, to success in business. I think doing things simply and not overcomplicating things just because, and there's no value in overcomplicating it. I think that there are ways that we can keep things simple and find happiness in the simplicity of things. I think it's something that everyone needs to really think about.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also learned recently that we shouldn't apologize for repeating ourselves, because I repeat myself a lot. And I just learned the other day on a coaching call that my client, even though she knows me for a long time, didn't catch what I was feeling like I'm saying, like a broken record. So repeating is important because most people are distracted and they really don't hear us.
Of course, yeah. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. Well, Rhianna, this was so much fun, and I think it's so amazing what you're doing. Like I said, your bio is very impressive, and I love that that you shared your wisdom, what came out of it, and how you're doing it now. That you shared that with my audience. That's really awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Connie.